2 who speak fluent Spanish and at least 3 who are first-generation immigrants. Guzman has been linked to nearly 36 murders and drug cartels that traffic large amounts of cocaine and heroin in the U.S. In New York, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Can waking up early prevent your chances of developing breast cancer? Fox's Joy Piazza has today's House Call for Health.
British researchers say they found evidence that women who wake up early have a lower risk of developing breast cancer. The researchers looked at data from more than 400,000 women. They found that women who said they prefer mornings were 40 to 48% less likely to develop breast cancer. They also found that women who slept more than 7 or 8 hours each night were at higher risk of breast cancer. Also, this study has only been published online and has not yet gone through rigorous peer review, but the results add evidence to previous studies on the health effects of working night shifts.
And employers beware. 1 in 3 workers say they are likely to look for a new job in the next 12 months. That's according to a Spherian study of 2007 employees. Find more news at onenewsnow.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices.
Please call your senators today. It's time to put an end to the liberals' filibuster. Tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood now. Call the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. It's the day after Judgment Day. Yeah, and yes, I can laugh, I can giggle, I can have an upbeat attitude about this because guess what? That wasn't anything that was a huge surprise. The House going to the Democrats. It wasn't even a historic wave election. They didn't sweep anything. And after all of the hullabaloo about this star and that star coming here and there and campaigning for these Democrats and the amount of money that was spent, they've got to be really counting the cost and thinking, buyer's remorse overspent. Of course, controlling the House means they can kind of derail the president's agenda, but no more than the lackluster Republicans who only permitted tax reform to pass during this last 2-year session. So, I'm disappointed that we didn't prevail, but I'm not actually surprised. And there is nothing new under the sun, right? And so that's our daily confession for today. Listen, a GOP Senate, the House goes to the angry mob. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Call lines are open as always. You can dial in to 866-963-2037. I'm Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk, AFR.net, urbanfamilytalk.com are the websites where you can find the podcasts and more information about what we do here. And I want to talk to you about our first guest. We have Cinque Henderson. He returns. He's a Democrat, but he also is moderate on a ton of different issues. He's going to give us his take on what happened last night across the country. It should be a very interesting conversation. When he came on last to discuss his book, Sit Down and Shut Up, How Discipline Can Set Students Free, we found that discussion between a die-hard Republican such as myself and a pretty, he's on the left. He's a liberal Democrat, could be fascinating and engaging, and so we're going to do it again. We are also going to have election analysis throughout the program. We'll be taking your calls, and we're going to talk about what next steps are. What does it look like with, Nancy Pelosi as Speaker? The president has been very open with his feelings that he would prefer to see a Nancy Pelosi speakership as opposed to someone else. And I think that's because Nancy Pelosi's comments of late have really been a moderating factor for her party. Yeah, she says crazy stuff all the time. That statement does not erase the many, many clips we've played of her just really, kind of bonkers statements. But you have to admit that compared to some others in her party who would possibly take it over the speakership, she's not the worst option. She may be the best option among the bunch. So I can see the president's reasoning there. We'll get into his altercation with Jim Acosta. Of course, I have thoughts about that. And we're also going to be dipping into some conversation about what the markets are doing in response to divided government. And we're going to also just touch on a historical look back, because there's precedent here for us to be kind of excited, because sometimes when the Republicans can't get something done, Democrats who want something in exchange can get something done. So we'll see. We'll see how that all cracks up. Right now, I want to do our daily confession. So you're probably thinking, well, what are we going to be confessing today? Like, what's our daily confession going to be today with what happened last night? You know, it wasn't a total victory. And I'm like, you know, I like winning too. I love a total victory. It's fun. It's a sense of relief. You're like, wow, you know, we worked, we prayed, we got what we wanted. But God works in all of these circumstances, and nothing is new to him. So our daily confession for today is Ecclesiastes chapter 1. And I'm going to give you a bit of it, like a good chunk of it, but it's because it's so appropriate to waking up this morning with, you know, just a few months down the road, Nancy Pelosi will be behind the speaker's gavel again. And some people are acting like it's the end of the world, and other people are yawning and moving on with their coffee and things that they have to get done for the day. It says, vanity of vanities. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man from all of his labor in which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away, and another generation comes. But the earth abides forever. The sun also rises, the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind towards the south, and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually, and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run to the sea. Yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. All things are full of labor, man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which is, and what will be, that which is done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who come after. So part of what's being said here, and this is a difficult passage to kind of interpret, and I'm not going to go into all of it, but the reason this was encouraging to me is that this isn't the first time you've had an agenda stopped midway by an electorate that said, you know what, I want to see something different in the purse strings. I want to give some control back to the Democrats. Now, I think it's unfortunate that Hillary Clinton said a couple weeks ago that the way to get the people calmed down, the way to stop the violence and the incivility and the mobs was to give the Democrats control. I thought that was an unfortunate statement for her to make. I said so at the time, and I don't think that was the impetus for voters to make the decisions that were made across the country that turned the control of the House back over to the Democrats. But I do think it's instructive for us to understand that there is also a way that God can move in this circumstance to bring about his will for this nation. It doesn't have to be that we would have, you know, a super majority in the House in order to get anything done. And what kind of really bolstered my thought that this was a great scripture for us today was earlier, mid-morning, when the president took the podium to do the press conference. He said that one of the issues he'd had during the first 2 years of his presidency was that, you know, he'd often have these really bedrock ideas that he would try to get legislation passed. And he'd say, you know, look, Congress, I need you guys in the House to pass this bill so we can get a corresponding bill in the Senate, and you can get some legislation on my desk for me to sign. And often in the House, because there are these different little conferences within the Republican Party, you'd have 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 Republican House members band together and say, we're not going to come with you on this. We're not going to work with you on this bill until we get X. And so, of course, that's horse trading. That's negotiation. There's nothing really wrong with that in and of itself. But it stalled the president's agenda. There was also the issue of a lot of those guys in there not really being solid Republicans And they just didn't want to work with Donald Trump. And so he didn't have the success he could have had in his first 2 years. We didn't defund Planned Parenthood. We didn't get the wall funding enshrined so that it couldn't be taken away. We didn't do the things that Donald Trump said, hey, I'm running on this. And Republicans who were running at the time said, we're running on this. And those who were already in office kind of said, well, we didn't run on that. We aren't running on that. And when you get here, we're not going to help you with it. If you win, we're not going to help you with it. And so that's an unfortunate reality that we've dealt with for the past 2 years. Now, here we are with the lame duck session until January. And then when January comes, the Democrats will commence with their investigations. They plan on demanding the president's tax returns. Now, mind you, does it sound like governing? Does that sound like they have the best interest of the American people at heart? What happens if we get to look at Donald Trump's tax returns? Do I get money from that? Do I get less regulation? Does it help my business? Does it help my local taxes? Does it move the needle for me on any of the issues that impact me on a daily basis? No. And when I say that, just put yourself in that same sentence, multiply that by 100 million people, and you have 100 million people who are now, you just woke up this morning, you now know that the House of Representatives isn't going to be doing anything for you. They're not going to be doing anything to protect you, and they're not going to be doing anything for you, because under the Democrats, the only thing they want to do is tear down the president. They have no agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Nancy Pelosi did say they want to take your guns. So in addition to not having anything improve in your life, they also want you to be at the behest of any criminal who might want to break your door down or accost you in a dark alleyway or rape you in midday, which has happened here in St. Louis, city of St. Louis. People get raped in the middle of the day, just walking down the street. And am I being extreme? Absolutely not. I don't think the person who was a victim of that attack, the multiple women who were victims of that attack over a 3-week period, would say that sounds extreme at all. They'd say, man, I wish I'd had a gun on me. Man, I wish I'd owned a gun and been trained and been ready for that attack, because that would have prevented me from experiencing this from being victimized. And so there's nothing extreme about telling the truth about the fact that a democratically controlled House doesn't mean anything good for you in the way of legislation. They talk about Obamacare and pre-existing conditions, yet they've turned down every deal, every offer that's been made to fix, patch, repeal and replace, do anything with Obamacare, because they knew it was a winning issue for them in the midterms, and they only care about control and power. So I'm saying all of that in conjunction with that scripture to say nothing has changed. Nothing really has changed. In fact, the ground may be a little more favorable to the president in that with Nancy Pelosi, they have a long-standing working relationship. It's been adversarial this last 2.5, 3 years, but before that, he's donated to her campaigns. They've had dinner together. She's been down to his homes and all of that stuff. There's a working relationship there. And so if they could find things to horse trade on, they will. And that's coming from me. They don't call me Stacey on the right because I'm on the left. I don't agree with compromising on bedrock ideals like the funding of abortion or the funding of the border wall or laws that we already have on the books, softening them up so that lawbreakers and mobsters can run amok with impunity. I don't agree with that. But I'm also not a member of Congress. I'm not a senator. I don't work on the Hill. I'm not a part of that process. So I can afford to have my rigid stance and hold it because I don't have to make any deals. But the president cannot. So the key here is that we have to keep praying. At no point have we surprised God. He didn't turn around and say, oh my goodness, wow, would you look at that? The Americans have given over the control of the House to the Democrats. Woo, that's shocking. No, he was aware that this was going to happen. He knew it. He's in control. We have to continue to pray and exercise our duties as the governed. We're citizens. We have to make sure and hold people's feet to the fire. And we have to be prepared to vote next time as well. I know there's this running joke online, and I see it all the time. I saw it this time around as well, that this is the most important election of our lives. What will we do? It's the most important election of our lives. Well, we should really feel that way about every election, because every single election is an opportunity for us to vote our conscience and honor God graciously and gratefully acknowledging the fact that we live here in this country and we're so fortunate to have the right to vote, the responsibility to vote, and the ability to change our circumstances through the political process. So every election is the most important election because we should be participating. And we did. And so we got some great results. I was so happy to see Ted Cruz maintain his seat. I continue to be disappointed on a personal side that he refuses to come on the program and has rebuffed our interview requests. But that doesn't mean I don't support his legislative agenda, and I'm happy to see him remain the senator from the great state of Texas. And there were other wins that were very consequential. Namely, we Missourians no longer have to be represented by a diehard practicing Catholic who is also a diehard abortion supporter. Claire McCaskill was not just beaten by Josh Hawley, but completely ousted, run over. He just ran over her with an almost 10-point lead, beating her and ousting her from the Senate, which is what she deserved. So there were many bright spots last night. But no matter how bright or dim they may have been, nothing new under the sun. We continue on. When we return after these good messages, which you should stay tuned for, we'll have Cinque Henderson. He's a writer for HBO's The Newsroom. He's a Democrat. He's going to give us a little bit of election reaction. Stay there.
Len Ingram of Redeem Clean felt God call him to support the American Family Association.
I'm a laundryman. I'm the son of a laundryman, too. I love clean clothes. I love the business. I love everything about it. This project was built exclusively to support AFA and AFR. There's no strings attached. Another thing that I would like to see come out of this is that I would like to see other business people feel a calling to support ministries wherever and whatever they do to share the gospel of Jesus Christ.
In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean Laundry Detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and get Redeem Clean products at redeemclean.afastore.net. That's redeemclean.afastore.net.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. If you live long enough, you come to the conclusion that there are certain seasons of life. I'm not just referring to your age. There are seasons of joy and sorrow and testing and waiting and moving. A friend from Denver says, if you don't like the weather here, just sit tight. It will change. I've observed that the people who get the most out of life are those who can make the most of the changes in life. They're flexible. Listen to these familiar words in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. There is an appointed time for everything, and there is a time for every event under heaven, a time to give birth and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to shun embracing, a time to tear apart and a time to sew together, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What about you? What season is it in your life? Are you making the adjustments you need to make? Frustration comes when we battle with where we are, rather than responding to God and thanking Him and asking Him to give us what we need to really embrace the seasons of our lives. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Whether or not we change or adjust, life changes. We must adjust to where we are and thrive in our season.
Crawford Loritz is senior pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org. Legacy Moment is a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. You can go to StacyOnTheRight.com, @StacyOnTheRight on Twitter and Instagram, and you can hit the follow button. We'd appreciate that. So now it's my pleasure to welcome our guest for this hour. We have Cinque Henderson, former writer for HBO's The Newsroom and author of Sit Down and Shut Up, How Discipline Can Set Students Free. Cinque, thanks for joining the show today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about it. The results last night for the midterm election were mixed. The Republicans gained seats in the Senate, and the as was expected, I actually didn't believe it myself, but it has come to fruition. The House has gone to the Democrats, and Nancy Pelosi will most likely be the next Speaker of the House. She'll return to the Speaker's gavel. What is the agenda going to be for this new House coming in with divided government?
Well, I think excuse me, I think that's something that is one of the results of the mixed results is it's not entirely clear. I certainly think that whatever the ideas are going for, they have to be more than just investigating Trump, although I'm on board with that. It has to offer the people who were voting yesterday something substantive. It can't just be a reactionary Congress. And I think that if they return to the sort of bread and butter issues of health care, which I think energized a lot of people, I think those tax cuts agitated some people. And, you know, particularly middle-class tax cut, which I think Trump has signaled that he'd be on board with, that would certainly be a priority. I think also they are making plans to look into some of the accusations that have been made against Donald Trump, certainly more so than the previous Congress. And all I can say is I hope the one caution I would issue to Democrats is that we not overreach on this, that we use whatever power we have now with some wisdom and some propriety. As you say, it was mixed. It was certainly a shot across the bow for the White House, but it was not by any means a decisive blow. And there are risks for us going forward, but there are also some real opportunities.
So when you say you're interested in seeing investigations, one of the things that we learned from the last time a political party decided that they wanted to investigate and then move to impeach a president was that it was a very, very difficult justification to make to the American people, and the American people punished them for that afterwards. It was the Republicans. The president was Bill Clinton, and he was a hugely popular president. Different scenario than it is with President Trump, who is hugely popular with Republicans, 88% approval rating, but he's not so popular with mainstream Americans. And there are some moderates who love the policies but don't particularly like the presentation. So he doesn't have the same ironclad ability to weather a storm that a Bill Clinton had. But he does have a booming economy, low unemployment rate, and an overall market excitement around the creation of new jobs and repatriation of dollars back to this country that rivals the same kind of economic success that Bill Clinton had. So do you see any danger in the Democrats kind of making this basically let's beat Donald Trump up for the next 2 years and not really implement an agenda on behalf of the American people?
Absolutely. I think that is the primary risk for the Democrats at this point. And I think there are certainly a move to some degree in the party, certainly amongst the sort of the further left progressives. I'm not sure that Nancy Pelosi, I know people sort of hold her up as a boogeyman. And if she wins again, fine. If she doesn't, I don't care. I'm in California. I don't have a devout attachment to her. I think she's smart enough not to turn this into the party of bring down Trump. I will say, however, with his just recent move of firing Jeff Sessions and putting in charge of the Mueller investigation, his name is escaping me at the moment, but a guy who's been on record saying that he doesn't agree with the Mueller investigation. I think that that's already raising a bit of the legitimacy for the House of providing a check to the president if his goal is to interfere with the Mueller investigation, which there is strong suggestion with the firing of Sessions and putting in, I wouldn't say a crony necessarily, but someone who supported him with the investigation. So I think had that move not happened and the Congress under Pelosi had moved full speed ahead to investigate him, I think that would be a danger. But I do think it's a very real possibility that Trump will try and derail some of these things. Who knows? I can't predict it 100%, but he's made a pretty dramatic move so far, 2 dramatic moves so far. But I think you're absolutely right. We do have to be cautious with that. We absolutely have to put real issues on the table. We actually have to have an agenda that is an active idea. This is what we stand for. This is not just what we stand against.
So I understand you are characterizing Jeff Sessions as having been, okay, so I'm on CNBC.com, embattled Attorney General Jeff Sessions resigns under pressure from Trump. So
resigned, yes, sorry. So I should say he's resigned. Yes. Right.
So I'm just as skeptical about well, actually, I'm not that skeptical because I saw this coming. There were precursors to this. We were pretty sure that there was a possibility this could have happened this summer, but then the rhetoric was tamped down, and it seemed to me that the president telegraphed through Sarah Sanders that there would be no changes until after the midterm election. And now, as is the norm for presidential administrations, at the 2-year mark where the midterm elections occur, during the lame duck session, there are many, many changes in staffing from, inside the staffing of the White House to certain changes being made in agencies such as, the Department of Justice. I'm not surprised to see that Jeff Sessions is leaving. His recusal from the Mueller investigation without speaking to the president about it first really was the impetus for the kind of darkening of their relationship. So
sure.
I want to just push back just a tad on what you said about him appointing someone who's a crony. What my understanding is of Washington, D.C. at this point is there's no one who's just a career appointee who has no political opinions.
Yep.
Everyone who works there is on one side or the other, and it would be kind of imprudent for the president to choose someone who viscerally opposes him to run an investigation that really, in the opinion of multiple tens of millions of Americans, is a simple witch hunt brought about by the fact that a few people at the FBI's leadership didn't want President Trump to be the president. So I'm happy with the conclusion of the investigation. I'm happy to see what the report says, but I in no way trust that the Mueller team, which everybody on the team has donated to the Democrats, everybody on the team has expressed a preference for Hillary Clinton to be the president. I can't even see how they could possibly be impartial. And the fruit of the poison trees is the entire investigation is a sham because it was all predicated upon the dossier, which was an opposition research document put together by someone who was disgraced in the intelligence community from overseas. And none of it has been validated. It was actually issued and then leaked to the media, and then used that media story was used in conjunction with the same document, the source document, to get the FISA application approved to tap Trump Tower and to begin to surveil this man while he was, on the campaign trail. We've never seen anything like this in the history of our country, from one political party to another, outgoing administration to a possible incoming one during a campaign season. What do you think about all of that?
Well, I am not of... I take away the word crony. I don't think he's a crony. You're right. Everyone has some political affiliations. I mean, that said, there. But I guess on the other hand, I'm not. I would say this. Bob Mueller was a person who was enormously well respected by both Republicans and Democrats prior to taking this position. If people felt that he was biased in life, that should have been his reputation before he took that. I think that started to come out more when there was more of a partisan attack on the people he was hiring. You are right that many of the people have donated to the Democrats or the Republicans, but I also have to say that I think it's important to, I like to think that the Republicans who are appointed to the Supreme Court can act impartially. Just because they may have donated to a Republican doesn't mean that they are only going to side with Republicans. I'd like to think that. I like to think that also about Democrats. So I think that saying that no one, when I go to a jury, as I just finished jury duty, I may be against police brutality of a certain kind, but that doesn't mean every cop I see I think is a rotten cop. So however it was kicked off or initiated, I'm anxious to see the final report because I do believe in Bob Mueller's ability to be nonpartisan. Because that was his reputation. He ran the FBI under both Republicans and Democrats, and and Comey was a Republican. I think he's registered independent now, and I'm not a fan of Comey. Let me be clear. However the investigation was initiated, I have every faith that, and we'll see in the results. I think Bob Mueller is a fair-minded guy. I think there is, from what has come out in the media, there is legitimate reason to believe that maybe not with Trump himself, but that among the broad circle of Trump's orbit, there were contacts with Russians, or at least contact with Wikipedia. But I don't know. I again have to wait until the report, and that's what investigating this is for. And we'll have to see. So if it's a nothing burger, it's a nothing burger. But I don't like, and I think we all do, both left and right, you say, because this person is registered Republican, they can't see this objectively. Because this person is a registered Democrat, they can't see this objectively. And I think that's one of the dangers for all of us trying to find a way back to dealing with each other, Democrat in a sort of fair-minded way. One of the sad things about the election is that it seems to have hardened, the right is now further right. The states that Trump won are now more solid in the red categories. The ones that the Democrats have won now seem to be even further in the Democrat column, and I don't know if I'm hoping there will be more room for us to get along and see that there's good faith on opposite sides and that kind of thing.
So Cinque, I appreciate your going into that because I feel the same way. I feel like we are pretty entrenched on our opposing sides, and I'm not sure how much good conversation happens from those positions where we can't have any give and take on issues. But I do see a lot of demonization coming from there's this idea that and what's interesting about this idea that the president somehow colluded with Russia and is some kind of Russian agent and was placed in our presidency by Russians, because that's a tinfoil hat type of a thinking thing. It just doesn't make any sense. We've never had a precedent like that before. And in today's information age, if that were the case, Mueller's investigation would have wrapped up a year ago with the impeachment of Donald Trump, because it is so easy for them to find and run down these rabbit trails of communications. Even encrypted messaging isn't really encrypted messaging if you were the NSA or, a governmental agency with ties to Google and Alphabet. So the idea that President Trump is the president because of Russian interference is so demonstrably false and has already been proven so, that it's kind of crazy that we still have the investigation, which is the reason why so many people who previously thought Mueller was a good nonpartisan representation of a career service government person, why that has been obliterated. But I have to ask you, if if this investigation is legitimate and if the Democrats continue to maintain that there was Russian collusion, and that is the justification for them already tossing about all of this discussion about how they're going to prove using Trump's tax returns that he's a Russian agent, he's gotten money from the Russians, why didn't the Democrats run on that?
Look, I think that you can't. I don't think it's wise, one, to run purely of politics of personality. Even though I think we are becoming more and more politics of personality, I think that the Republican Party is now Trump's Republican Party more than it's ever been. The people he spoke up for, with one or two exceptions, they won. The people who spoke out against him lost. Flake, for example, resigned, and then some other people were camped. So, and the people who captivated the imagination, like Beto in Texas, he was just a compelling guy. He almost turned Texas blue. And that actually makes me nervous. Like, I don't like the politics of personality. I like the politics of policy. I'm glad the Democrats did not run explicitly on Trump colluding with Russia. And I'm not claiming that he did. I just want to be clear. I'm just saying that is the basis of the investigation. It is going to tell us at the end whether he did or not. I'm not of the mind, let's stop the investigation before we start it. If there's a compelling reason to look into it, let's do so. And then let's decide that there was nothing there or there was something there. And I certainly think there was at least as much of reason to go into the Trump campaign, I should say, is better, broader way, communication or talks with possible Russian conspirators as there were, say, the Hillary Clinton emails. And, I don't want to get back, rehash history. But I guess I'm not of the mind, let's cut down, just stop the investigation before we have a conclusion.
No, I feel like we're into it now. We're paying for it. It's I consider it to be a total and utter waste of time and taxpayer dollars, but I would never, ever support shutting it off. I think we should go take it to its conclusion, issue the report, and then move on to other investigations. And we have just about like a half a minute left here, just not even that much time, but oh no, there's the music. I was going to ask you about the president's kind of pushback, but amazing analysis. Thank you for coming on today and for your reasoned and thoughtful approach to, the left-right political spectrum. We need more of that. And we appreciate your time today, Cinque.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Talk to you again soon. That's Cinque Henderson. He's a writer for HBO's The Newsroom and author of Sit Down and Shut Up, How Discipline Can Set Students Free. We're going to be talking to you up next, right after these messages, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Give us a ring. Let's talk about this post-election melee that we're in. Stacey on the right. We'll be right back.
I just thank God for the Holy Ghost. If you will let him, he really will teach you all things. Have you ever made an excuse to someone why you were unable to do something or why you couldn't attend a certain event instead of just being honest and telling them you just were not interested? I think many of us have. Well, that's lying. Proverbs chapter 12 verse 17 says, an honest witness tells the truth. A false witness tells lies. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 1 in one translation says, dishonesty in business disgusts the eternal. It disgusts God. But fair dealing delights him. False witness utters lies. Be faithful and consistent with being honest with others. Stop with the excuses and be truthful. There is freedom when our integrity and character reflects our Savior Jesus Christ. What seems little to us are big to him. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory McIntosh. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Listen to Stacey on the Right with Stacey Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left. Just kept popping into my mind.
Stacey on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
When she became pregnant, Misty was the mother of 6. The youngest had just started full-time school, and she'd gotten a job. Misty thought abortion was the only option, so she went to Planned Parenthood and took the first of 2 abortion pills. She immediately regretted it and was able to reverse the abortion through abortion pill rescue. Then her unborn baby was diagnosed with Down syndrome, yet she fought off advice to abort. Her son Tig was born very early, and while he was still in the hospital, Misty's husband died. This widow with 7 children doesn't regret choosing life for her baby. Tig was sent here to me for a reason, she said. He puts a smile on my face every single day. This is a woman of faith.
For more information, visit our website at lifeissues.org.
and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Well, if they want to impeach President Trump, I would give them some advice. I've been there, done that with Clinton. Didn't work out for us. I would think twice about it. It will blow up in their face. Now, infrastructure. There's a natural fit for both parties to build out the infrastructure of this country. DACA for the wall. There's actually something you can do on immigration, maybe prison and sentence reform, and maybe some other things. But the reason we won is I think Kavanaugh united our party. The caravan was a front to our sovereignty. The economy was good, and President Trump worked his butt off to get out the Republican base vote. And I'm feeling really good now. This is a good night for Republicans in the Senate. Cory Gardner did a great job. We're just got to find common ground with the Democrats in the House. If they want to investigate Trump to death and try to impeach him, then it'll blow up.
Wow. So that's Lindsey Graham doing a little bit of post analysis. And look, it's not the optimal situation. The optimal situation is that it would have been a total red wave last night, and that we would have seen all of the Republican candidates swept into the House, and they'd have a supermajority, so that when all of the people who are so picky they can't even agree on what day it is or what the color of the sky is, those people could go off in the corner and scratch each other's eyes out. And they're Republicans, by the way. They'd go in the corner and scratch each other's eyes out. The Democrats would just keep banging on scraping doors with their fingernails and acting like lunatics. And real Republicans who have an agenda to accomplish could get together and pass legislation that would go to the Senate, which is controlled by the Republicans, and so on and so forth. Do I wish that we would have had 56 or 57 Republicans in charge over the past 2 years? Absolutely, because there would have been no excuse. The pressure on the House of Representatives would have been so strong for them to get things done. But we didn't have that, and now we do. So that means we're going to get judges. Now I'm going to give you some perspective, then we're going to go to the phones. You can call in. Join us at 866-963-2037. Losing the House is a setback, but the average president, if you look back over the past 25 years, loses 37 seats in their first midterm. Obama lost 63, Clinton lost 53, and as of right now, Trump has lost 26, 27, thereabouts. We still have some races that we're waiting to final out. Advancing in the Senate by 5 seats is a historic, monumental achievement and shows that there is some strength yet there in the Trump movement. And this is the Trump Republican Party. Whether people like it or not, his agenda and his methodology, the Trump doctrine, is what is ruling the day here. And candidates who didn't buy into that were ousted last night. Candidates who did and also ran good campaigns and had GOTV that worked, they won. That's the lesson here. So we need to gird our loins and be very positively minded about what's going on here. So let's go to the phones. We have Daniel in Indiana. Daniel, thank you so much for calling Stacy on the Right.
Hey, Stacy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hey, I just want to really quick, I'm a truck driver, so I just want to say quickly, the gentleman that you had on for the analysis, I completely disagree with him.
Okay.
The sham that was put on all the way from the dossier and all the evidence that's out there now, unfortunately, everybody that's involved with that coup, they took the Constitution, they took our Declaration of Independence, they wadded it up, and they threw it on the floor, and they stepped all over it. They cheated the American people, and they should be held to account to the highest standard.
So I don't disagree with you. And I will even go as far to say that, because one of the things I wanted to ask him was, are you planning on, what's your acceptance of the fact that people who did all of the things that we're talking about, they need to be indicted as well? And we ran out of time, but here's what I heard the president say today in so many words. I'm paraphrasing. He said that if the Democrats want to work together, he's basically telegraphing that he's going to tack to the middle a bit, and it may cost him a little bit with the base, but he's going to tack to the middle to get some things done. He's going to be willing to horse trade like nobody's business on that wall, funding for it, the end of chain migration. He's going to give some amnesty out if he needs to these DACA recipients in order to get those things done. And I don't think the base is going to be completely opposed to that. There will be people who lose their minds, but for the most part, people are going to say, but I'm sorry, are they getting the wall done? Are we getting the end of chain migration? Are we going to have real E-Verify? We haven't heard the president talk about E-Verify at all. I wrote a piece that's up in Newsweek right now about E-Verify and how important it is that we use that simple common sense tool that takes very little money to implement to shore up our immigration system. So it is a witch hunt, but I want to see some prosecutions from the other side. The president said this morning, you know, if Nancy Pelosi wants to play the investigation game, then we might need to really, you want to look into Kavanaugh? Let's look into him. Let's prosecute some people who brought false statements. Let's find out who really leaked the statement, the private letter from Christine Blasey Ford. Let's get into some investigations, and then let's have everyone get prosecuted. If everyone's going to be investigated, everyone gets prosecuted, and that means heads will roll all over the place. It won't just be this constant mantra about Republicans and all these indictments, which, by the way, none of them are for Russian collusion. They're all for wrong acts that happened well before any of these people ever knew Donald Trump. That is the truth there that you're not getting from the media. And the lies and deceit that we're seeing from the media is just so disgusting to me right now. And it is the reason why Donald Trump, as people said, spun out of control today. What did you expect? Jim Acosta's yelling so hard, spit was probably flying out of his mouth onto the president. It was an utter disgrace, Jim Acosta, this morning. All right, let's go to the phones. We have Ed in Tennessee. Thank you so much for calling the show today.
Thank you, Stacey, and I do appreciate you taking my phone call.
Sure.
My concern since the Democrats took the House again, about the tax cuts that Trump was wanting to do and the immigration, because this immigration thing is a serious situation that's been going on for years. And my mom came from Vienna, Austria. Okay? She came over here the right way. She had to. And with these Democrats complaining about letting all these immigrants coming in the way they are, letting them come in, it just angers the daylights out of me that they're saying that Trump is doing what he is. He is trying to protect this country. Mm-hmm. And it just really concerns me that a great deal with that, along with the tax cuts and everything. And this Obamacare is it's so ridiculously a joke.
It is. It is. Well, let me address your comment, Ed. Thank you so much for calling in today. I want to make it clear that them having control of the purse strings means they will go after the tax cut. But the good news is no tax cut repeal or anything that has to do with raising taxes gets past the Republican Senate. None of that gets past the Republican Senate. And if any kind of compromise bill were to reach the president's desk, there's no way he's undoing anything that's driving the economy. He's said that giving the Democrats control of the House means actually hamstringing the economy and reversing the gains that have been made. So he understands this better than anybody, and he never signs. I'm willing to put 25 cents on it because I'm not a betting woman, but the president never signs anything that undoes his signature legislative accomplishment from the first 2 years in office, which was the tax reform package. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Brittany in Georgia. Hey, Brittany, thanks for calling the show.
Hi, Stacey. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Okay, just really quickly, I'm a teacher. Mm-hmm. I'm African American, and I would consider myself like in the middle. Okay. I like to listen to both sides and see who has the best plan. But in regards to rhetoric, this is where I've always had my issues with Donald Trump, and maybe you can help me figure this out as an educator. The things that he says plus the things that he does, it's kind of hard for me to square when I'm relaying that message to our youth, because I'm here as somewhat of a moral leader, as a Christian in the classroom, as a moral leader, trying to explain to them, like, hey, when the president says this, he probably shouldn't say it like that, but this is what he means. And constantly finding myself as an educator just doing that. When he gets, let's just use the old example. I know it's played out, but old example of him saying, Mexicans most of them are rapists and murderers, but some of them may be good. Now, as an educator, if I were to step in the classroom and say something like that, I'm immediately losing my license, as I should.
Well,
and
I think
so how do I square that as an educator with students?
I'm with you that was a tough one, but he was referring specifically to all of the rapes that are going on down at the southern border. 2,500 children raped every year in Texas over a sustained number of years. He found that out during his briefings and different information that he was getting as in the run up to him being elected president. And when he started looking into that information and started talking about it, that is when his rhetoric changed, because he was literally learning about all of these crimes that have been committed by illegal aliens. So he wasn't very specific. Obviously, not all Mexicans are rapists, but many of the people who come here illegally engage in that kind of behavior: the sex trafficking, the human trafficking, the assaults, rapes, kidnappings, murders, drug dealing. That is what he's talking about, with a very specific subset of people who come from south of the border, and it's the ones who come here illegally. Law-abiding immigrants, people who come here legally, are actually more law-abiding than the general population. So it's a lot of information. It's very complex. I respect you for trying to moderate the comments. I expect we'll see his tone soften up a bit, but the truth is the truth. And so it's always the best policy. Even if the truth comes out in a harsh way, the truth can cut, but those are the wounds of a friend. So let's go to, thank you so much for calling the show today, Brittany. Chris in Arkansas. Chris in Arkansas. Thanks for calling the show.
Just a quick comment I was going to ask you about, about the thing that happened with Jim Acosta. He needs to be barred from the White House. He put his hands on a woman on national TV.
Battery.
He needs to be gone. Absolutely, it is.
He needs to take his hard pass.
National TV.
Absolutely. So
he does.
He has a hard pass. So Jim Acosta has a hard pass into the White House, which means that he doesn't have to have an appointment to be there. A hard pass holder can go in and out of the White House entry points because it's assumed that he is always on business because he has a hard pass. It's basically like he works there. And I think his hard pass should be revoked.
The president needs to reject that.
Yeah, it needs to be revoked. Absolutely. And he could definitely be given one of the daily passes.
A woman on national TV.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for calling the show, Chris. One of my main issues with that is, if I want to go to the White House because I've not been designated White House correspondent for American Family Radio or Urban Family Talk or anything like that, where I could apply for a hard pass and go in whenever I wanted, if I go to the White House, I apply for a pass and I get it for that specific appointment. It's not even a whole day pass. It's a pass for a specific amount of time. That's what Jim Acosta should have. And I know some people say, well, you guys are overreacting. No, we're not. He stood there and yelled at the President of the United States, and he would not sit down. And I know a lot of people are upset with the way the president behaved, but I've had Democrats yell in my face before. I've had them put their finger up in my face and literally jab it back and forth to where I had to kind of lean back a little bit. And then when I told them, we're done talking, step back, they didn't look like they were going to move. And I remember looking around and assessing the situation and thinking, I need to exit this situation because this person is in my personal space. That is similar to what the behavior of Jim Acosta is on a regular basis. He may not have put his finger in the president's face, but he was yelling at him from within arm's distance. That is unacceptable behavior, and it should not be permitted. Let's go to Tony in Georgia. Tony, thanks for calling the show today.
Yes. Stacey, you are a breath of fresh air every day. Thank you so much. I love you.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Just want to talk about the voter oppression that they're talking about in Georgia here. Don't know how much you've heard of it, but
I heard about it. I'm not buying it, but
yeah. Yeah, I'm not buying it either. I think Kemp should have resigned from his office when he started running for governor. But besides that, all they're saying that at polling places there were 2 hours waits and they ran out of paper ballots and all this stuff. But that's not really a state problem. That is your local problem. That is a problem that they need to take up with their local county commissioners.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that point, Tony. I'm serious. Thank you for that point. So when this morning during the press conference, when someone asked the president, are you do you take responsibility for the voter suppression in Georgia? And he said the elections in this country are locally run. That is the reason elections are locally run, because anything that's run by the government, where the government bureaucracy is in Washington, D.C., and the actual events are happening on the ground in states, means you're going to have people who can't be held accountable for what went on. So if the people of Georgia, I don't care what your political affiliation is, if you were disenfranchised or you felt that you were not given the proper opportunity to vote, the person who's responsible for that is your local municipal elector, the person who runs that particular precinct. And then you go up from there. I mean, I know we want to blame Donald Trump for everything, but how could he possibly have controlled the election processes in Georgia? He was gallivanting across the country on Air Force One, attending rallies. Come on. He had nothing to do with it. We will ask you, good listeners, if you're in the call queue and you want to hold on, stay right there. Otherwise, we're saying goodnight to you right now. God bless you from the heartland. We have onenewsnow.com news and information up next.
Family Talk.
Secular progressives in the United States have worked to alter the very nature of our republic.
For the progressives, there are no longer any God-given natural rights.
AFA Executive Vice President Ed Vitagliano helps you understand the progressive threat to the American Republic. Get your copy of this powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute at afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is out at the Department of Justice. Fox's Catherine Herridge reads part of Sessions' resignation letter.
I am particularly grateful to the fabulous men and women in law enforcement all over this country with whom I have served. I have had no greater honor than to serve alongside them. As I have said many times, they have my thanks and I will always have their backs. Most importantly, in my time as Attorney General, we have restored and upheld the rule of law, a glorious tradition that each of us has a responsibility to safeguard. We have operated with integrity and have lawfully and aggressively advanced the policy agenda of this administration. And then he concludes on a personal note. I have been honored to serve as Attorney General and have worked to implement the law enforcement agenda based on the rule of law that formed a central part of your campaign for the presidency. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. President. It's signed Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Now, Fox News, the Associated Press, and just about every other news outlet says the resignation came at the request of President Trump, who named Sessions' Chief of Staff, Matthew Whitaker, as acting Attorney General. More news at onenewsnow.com. Despite Rick Scott declaring victory in the Florida Senate race, this race may be far from over. Fox's Peter Ducey reports from Naples.
Inside the Scott War Room last night, they were looking at the numbers. They thought that they won early, and Governor Scott grew confident enough in the lead that he just took the stage here in Naples at his victory party before any of the networks had called the race. And Governor Scott was not mincing words once he got up there, as though there could be any result other than him going to Washington as the next senator from Florida. The polling averages in this state showed Scott and Governor-elect Ron DeSantis trailing Democratic opponents going into yesterday, so each of their wins could be considered big upsets. And at the end of Governor Scott's remarks here in Naples last night, they had a confetti cannon go off. And again, not something you do if you're worried about a recount.
Meanwhile, Montana Democrat John Tester has won a third Senate term, beating Republican Matt Rosendale, the state auditor. President Trump had taken a personal interest in defeating Tester and had visited the state to campaign against the incumbent. Trump had said he wanted to make Tester pay at the polls for helping derail a Trump nominee to lead the Department of Veterans Affairs. Tester insisted Montana voters across the political spectrum would support him after examining his record. An atheist group is up to its old tricks again, targeting a chaplain at a top college football program. Here's AFN's Bill Bumpus.
Wisconsin-based Freedom from Religion Foundation has attacked Auburn University following a video that circulated in the media showing Chet Williams, a chaplain with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, praying with Auburn football players before a game. The atheist group tried a few years ago to apply pressure on Auburn and other major college football schools to get rid of chaplains, but to no avail. Steve McConkey is president of the sports ministry Four Winds Christian Athletics. McConkey notes that Williams is not paid by the university, and the prayers are voluntary, not mandatory. He tells AFN the group is just mad that Christians have an influence in football.
Because they see a lot of Christian activity, and they don't like it. They see a bunch of people out on the field praying, and it just makes them upset that the influence of our younger generation by these leaders would have a potential to stop their program, Freedom from Religion. They want to promote, as many secular people as they can without God in our society.
McConkey calls the latest attack from the atheist group a publicity stunt. I'm Bill Bumpus.
And good news involving gas prices. AAA says the national gas price average has fallen to its lowest level since April. A gallon of regular today will set you back on average $2.74, but as always, some drivers will pay more, others less. That is American Family News for this hour. For more news and information, visit onenewsnow.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to download the One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices. Thanks for listening.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place. Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Now, Stacy Washington.
How are you?
Beto Mania. Beto Mania.
Beto Mania. I'm actually not counting out Beto.
He wants to win and should.
Texas might be feeling the Beto momentum.
Beto O'Rourke, one of the all-stars, one of the best stories. A rising Democratic star.
Beto O'Rourke has caught fire.
You're a rock star.
No, there's just so many great people.
Are.
You're this, rock star celebrity guy.
Woke skateboarder, Beto O'Rourke.
It is almost inevitable that Texas ultimately turns blue.
And the Democrats are pumped.
He just kind of has this it factor.
Crowds and energy growing. You can look at it right there.
He cannot compete with the energy level that Beto O'Rourke has created.
His plans were being smoking hot in a naughty but approachable sort of way.
Beto and Big Gillum may be the two best Democratic candidates running this cycle.
It's difficult to square the energy we see at these events with the polls that show him down 5, 6, 7, 8 points.
We have a big call. This is out of Texas. NBC News is projecting Ted Cruz will return to the Senate.
Lindsey Graham, if you killed Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate, nobody would convict you. How bad are you going to feel if you lose to that guy?
Yeah.
Well, I guess he feels pretty badly. Yeah, I guess he says he doesn't feel bad, but I think he probably does. But this was all a vehicle for him to get national name ID, and he was abetted in that effort by all of the voices that you heard from late night television and cable news and everyone else, because Beto O'Rourke is their next Obama. They have not looked across their field and found someone from amongst their bench, like Kamala Harris. She's not good. She's not good for them on the national scene because there's so much video of her being really rude to people. And I don't mean in a way that you're like, oh, woo, mic drop. I mean, it's that kind of annoying, needling, I'm going to speak to you like you're a hostile witness, even though the person's testifying before the Senate, and is there for a confirmation hearing, and she treats them worse than she treated people she was prosecuting for major crimes. And also Cory Booker, who is a practicing homosexual and took the time out of a Senate confirmation hearing to ask someone if they found homosexual sex to be objectionable. He actually asked them questions about homosexual sex that it was just so disgusting and so demeaning and so outside of the norm. He is not someone who is mainstream enough to be the president of the United States. Not this decade. You know, the liberals are moving the mark. They're indoctrinating the kids on the homosexual sex. They're teaching everybody these things about sexuality and gender, and they've really got a stranglehold on our youth, which is only our fault because we leave our kids in these schools where they're teaching these horrible things. And at some point, they will be able to literally have a litmus test. Do you find homosexual sex objectionable? And if you say, yes, I do, they'll say, well, then you can't be confirmed to work in this government because that's not something we permit here. That's where they want to go. But he's not mainstream right now. Elizabeth Warren kind of knocked herself out of the running with her whole, I'm going to prove I'm an American Indian thing. And the release of that blood test really, it demonstrated to most Americans that she does not have a good grip on reality and about what voters care about. No one cares what her ethnic background is. The fact that she's been mocked about it and she can't let it go is her own personal private problem. It's not a voter problem. So that leaves Beto O'Rourke. He has the same kind of charisma that Barack Obama had. He has a bad boy background where he was in a band and he used to ride a skateboard, and he's had a drunk driving conviction. And so, you know, he's a little bad boy, a little bit rock and roll, and Democrats love that kind of thing. He's someone who can go on late night TV and slow jam the news, and he can have pictures of himself taking selfies and dropping the mic and speaking to himself in the mirror. And he's just that guy that Democrats can get behind, not because he's got great policies, not because he has wonderful ideas, but because he's one who will evolve on social issues. He'll evolve on things like plural marriage and, sex between adults and small children and things like that. And why am I saying that? Because that's where the sex is everything. Sex is freedom. You can't say anything about my morals agenda is going. That's where it's going. You got NAMBLA and all of these really horrible organizations seeing the success that's been had in other types of normalization of sexual behavior, and they want that for their thing too. And when I said that it would be a lot of people advocating for LGBT and transgenderism when homosexual marriage was something that everyone was fighting for, oh, you're a fearmonger. You just hate gay people. I don't. You just want to make people look bad. I don't. But what do we see now? We see the people who want to marry more than one person stepping up and saying, yeah, why if it's not wrong for two men or two women to marry, why can't I love two people? Why? So that's where all of this is going. And Beto O'Rourke is the perfect vehicle for that. He's someone that people will listen to and look at, but not hear anything that he says. People won't care on the left what he does. They'll just be looking at how cool he looks in a suit, how often he goes on late night television, the cult of personality. We need policy. We need serious people in government. He's not one of them, but this was a great election for him because he didn't have to win. He only had to get national name ID. So let's go back to the phones. We have a caller about the tax returns. Thank you for calling the show today. What's your name?
Hey, Stacey. Yeah, my name is Daryl. I'm calling you from Mississippi.
Okay.
I am a Christian. I'm a United States Marine Corps combat veteran, and I'm also a Democrat. Been one my whole life. And it does not mean I support Democrats all the time, because I always look at the person rather than the party. And I've voted for quite a few Republicans in my time. And as a matter of fact, in 2016, I wasn't for Hillary or Bernie. My choice for president would have been John Kasich had he won the Republican nomination. However, I did want to say something. I never have liked Trump because being a combat veteran, when he said what he said about John McCain, that absolutely floored for me. I've never supported the man since. He's never apologized. But here's the thing on the tax return.
Well, you don't like me either then, because I'm no fan of John McCain. So, just full disclosure. But go on. And thank you for your service.
Okay. Here's the deal with the tax return. And well, look, I don't agree with the man, but as a veteran, I respect his sacrifice for this nation. Okay, so that's where it was for me. I don't have to agree with the man to respect what he did for this country. Okay, The thing with the tax returns is Republicans have been claiming all along there's nothing there. Trump didn't get any money from Russia. Okay, if that's the case, then you and every other Republican should be all behind the Democrats, not only getting a hold of those tax returns, but releasing them. Because if Trump didn't do anything wrong, if he doesn't have any Russian money behind him, if he didn't have them Russian oligarchs investing in his businesses over the last 10 or 20 years, if he's given all the charities he said he's given to, then his tax returns will reflect that. And then every Republican stand up and say, hey, look, I told you so. But yet I don't hear the Republicans saying, yeah, okay, when the Democrats get in there and they get the tax returns, they can go ahead and release them, and we can see that Donald Trump is just a straight-up forthright guy. So are you in favor of Trump's tax returns being released?
No.
Because you're saying that he didn't do anything. Well,
no, I didn't say that.
You know for a fact he's done something wrong.
No, that's not it at all.
There's dirty money behind him.
Nope. That's not it at all. In fact, I think it's just the opposite. But this, Daryl, is not about what I think. It's about the right of the President of the United States. He's filled out the 100-plus page financial disclosure, which tells a lot more about your financial picture than the simple tax return. And if he doesn't want to disclose it because he's currently still, after all this time, under audit, then that's his right. It has nothing to do with me thinking he's guilty. I don't think he has anything to hide, but I think he has every right to say he doesn't want to release his tax returns. And, you said you were a moderate and that you voted for Republicans before, but in your argument, you made it pretty clear where you stand. You don't like President Trump and you want to bring him down. And you think he's been placed in our government by these all-powerful Russian oligarchs, which is comical because you probably also think that there's some magical white man in the sky who's in control of all the black people too. And he's like got a little puppet strings and he's moving my shoulders right now. And now he's going to tell me to laugh. Yeah, he's in charge of everyone. This magical old white man. And he's in control of everybody in the Republican Party. And so, no, I don't care what his tax returns show. You know why? Because you don't care what Hillary Clinton's Clinton Foundation reports show. You don't care what many Democrats on the left, people who have literally done wrong things, received money, misappropriated funds, you don't care about that. When you start to care about the application of the law equally for every American, then I will begin to care as well. But until then, I'm over here. I don't care. I don't care what his tax returns show because he gave the 100-page financial disclosure. And that is something that is much more comprehensive, and it is what he preferred to give, and therefore I'm fine with it. Yeah. And so if you think, he paid me to do that, well, I get paid to do a lot of different independent contractor arrangement type jobs, but I don't get paid to have these opinions. They're my own. And as I said, thank you for your service. I always respect people who've given their time to this country. I'm a fourth-generation military vet myself, so, good on you. And I do respect John McCain's service to this country, but being a veteran does not lift you above reproach and prevent Americans from criticizing your behavior. Being a veteran does not make you immune to criticism, nor does being in law enforcement, nor does being the president or an elected member or an honorable such and so this or that, or a justice on the Supreme Court or an appellate court. No one is above criticism. And so therefore, I don't care what anyone else's opinion is. I don't care if it upsets you that I've criticized John McCain. His service to our country notwithstanding, I disagreed with him vehemently on a number of issues, and I felt some of his conduct was below the standard. But yes, he performed a great service for this country. He also is not immune to criticism. So let's listen to, I'm kind of a little in shock mode about, we heard it coming in. We can't believe it's not Beto and this whole cult of personality with Beto O'Rourke. But this morning, Kellyanne Conway was up early doing some of the shows talking about the midterms and how President Trump made history again. And I thought she made some good points that can kind of get us where we want to go. And also, I forgot to tell you who's on the program this hour. We have Tabitha Bingham. She's the Director of Communications for the Florida Federation of Young Republicans. We also have Chad Groening, who is from onenewsnow.com and the news division here at American Family Association and American Family Radio. He'll be on with us in the third segment. We'll take your calls throughout, 866-963-2037. Let's listen to Kellyanne Conway break down what actually happened last night in her opinion in number 2.
The president had many phone calls, and he, including with Nancy Pelosi, who somehow on the phone didn't mention investigations and subpoenas, didn't mention that in her comments last night. And who knows who the Democrats will choose as their leaders in the House, because even though they've won a few seats here and there, this president has made history yet again last night. You know, in the last 80 years, the party in power has only picked up 8 Senate seats. And last night, the president, through his leadership and his engagement on the ground for these candidates again and again, has produced at least 3 new Senate seats. So 8 over the last 80 years, 3, possibly 5, as the count still goes on. That's truly historic. Also, I just think that the president has put everybody in a great position to talk about this historic economy. And there are a number of candidates who seemed allergic to the president on the Republican side. They didn't want him to campaign for them. They lost last night. You had people like Claire McCaskill pretending that she works with the president, saying, I'm not, quote, one of those crazy Democrats. She also this morning is not even one of those elected Democrats.
So there's a lot to unpack for the midterm. And I think, you know, anyone who's acting surprised that there are going to be staff shakeups and people leaving hasn't been paying attention. And she went on a little bit further to describe some more of what we can expect and, you know, the details about what this really was last night, because there's been a lot of mischaracterization and non-information peddled. Uh-oh, I hear music. Okay, guess what? We'll listen to that clip in the third segment coming in. We have Tabitha Bingham, Director of Communications for the Florida Federation of Young Republicans. She'll be with us up next, right after these messages. Stay there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, the popularity of our spiritual heritage tours each year continues to grow. Those are our tours to Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon, Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. Those are 2 separate trips, but a lot of folks go on both of them. But the popularity continues to grow, and we sell out 2 or 3 months in advance every year. So we're letting you know when our June and September tours are. Just go to our website, spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com. There's 2 tours. There's one to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, and then there's a separate trip, but they're back-to-back, to Washington, D.C., and to George Washington's Mount Vernon. So if you want to go on those tours with us, just go to the website, spiritualheritagetours.com, spiritualheritagetours.com, and check out all the info.
Hello, this is Bishop Harry Jackson of Hope Christian Church in Beltsville, Maryland. Jesus said you would do greater works than he did. God says, hey, if you do my will, I'm not only going to back you in ways you have never seen, I'm going to protect, I'm going to provide, and I'm going to be with you. Start small, but dream big. What's dreaming big? Dreaming big is knowing that God is going to use you, hoping against hope, not settling that I got to do the status quo and do what everybody else did in order to get this little bit that I want. I'm just one of the little people. I'm a nobody. All the big people today were nobodies at one point. Everybody that's famous now came through that terrible tunnel of anonymity, of being looked over, passed over, refused, underfunded, left behind, rejected, dejected, subjected to whatever others wanted to put on them. But sometime, Psalm 66 says of God, I have allowed men to ride over your heads, but I brought you out into a wealthy place. God wants to bring you out, me out. As we start small and dream big, we're faithful and we walk in his anointing, We let God dream his dream through us. We operate in teamwork to the glory of his name. We let our little ego take a lower place to his glory, and God, bam, shows up and does something that we can't do. Join us this Sunday morning at 6251 Avondale Road in Beltsville or on the web at thehopeconnection.org.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. I also want to give a huge shout out to the people of KSDK, our local television, one of our local television networks. Last night, one of their anchors, Christina, had a group of us, 6 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 1 independent on for a very heated and lively discussion. We had a couple of very long Facebook Live segments, and then we had some pretty quick hits, like a minute and some seconds, really quick hits that we did on live television last night, giving our reaction to the midterm results, which for us here in the state of Missouri, the big deal is that we no longer have Claire McCaskill. And I'm so grateful to God for that answered prayer. I wish I could fully articulate it. I've talked about her on the show a lot. We've invited her onto the program. I've given up on it, but I used to email her to try to get her to just explain some of the things that she was doing. And that was before I was in media, so it wasn't like I was emailing her as a media person. That was when I was just a simple constituent, volunteering in our kids' school district, and I wanted to know why she was doing certain things. And she just wasn't responsive to me. And it's not about me. It's one thing if she doesn't respond to me, but I can tell you how many people I've met who've told me, I've emailed Claire McCaskill or I've stopped by her office, and they just don't get anything back from her. And her allegiance to the pro-abortion industries in this country and her refusal to hear from people who disagree with her was just so strident. Getting a new person in there who more accurately and closely reflects the voting patterns of the people of the state of Missouri is a true victory for us. And I truly believe that Josh Hawley will do a better job that she has done, but I also plan to hold him accountable. And I hope to have him on the program periodically when it's appropriate to discuss what he's doing on behalf of the state of Missouri. But this is a closely watched race. A lot of money got poured in from outside the state, and he beat her handily. And so it is a day to rejoice over seeing Claire McCaskill end her reign over the people of Missouri here in the Senate. So right now I'd like to welcome Tabitha Bingham, Director of Communications for the Florida Federation of Young Republicans. Tabitha, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this. We had this kind of mixed result last night, but the president has characterized it as an almost total victory because he plans to work with the Democrats to get some horse trading done and still implement his agenda. And he's not afraid of their investigations. He says he's going to bring some of his own if they decide to go down that path. What do you think about what happened last night?
So the Democrats were hoping for a big wave, which did not happen. It was a red wave on the Senate side. We gained Joe Donnelly's, Heidi Heitkamp, Claire McCaskill, and Bill Nelson's seat. This was, I believe, the Kavanaugh effect. All those Democrats who voted no against Justice Brett Kavanaugh lost their jobs last night. I believe Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia held his seat because he voted yes for Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Even though losing the House is a setback for Republicans, the average president loses 37 seats in his first term. Obama lost 63. Clinton lost 53, and Trump lost 26. Advancing the Senate by 5 seats is historic and shows the movement is stronger than ever. I believe having Congress divided means President Trump's plans for new tax cuts, tougher immigration legislation, and changes to the Affordable Care Act will be blocked. Like you said, the leaders from both sides will pursue vastly different agendas on Capitol Hill. The Democrats in the House vowed to launch investigations into Trump's business dealings and the transparency of his administration. The Republicans in the Senate will continue to install more of Trump's nominees to the federal judiciary and defend President Trump on his policies.
So excellent breakdown. I said something similar about the numbers there that you quoted during the first hour of the show, and I think it bears repeating. We can't say it enough because most Americans are thinking that possibly there was some sort of a wave. It may not have been as large as as was hoped, unless they listened to Jake Tapper. There were only a couple of leftist media outlets that actually told the truth that the wave had dissipated and it wasn't a wave, because a ton of the seats that they flipped were in play because of retirements. A ton of the seats that they kept and were able to, gain were seats that they were expected to win anyway. They weren't Republican strongholds. They were able to make some inroads into the suburbs with women, which I think might be kind of a backlash to the Kavanaugh effect, which is unfortunate because that's a lot of misinformation. So what do you see the president doing going forward when he says he's happy that Nancy Pelosi will possibly be the one to take the gavel back? How do you think he's going to work with her? How's he going to do that?
I think that he is going to just get everyone in the House on his side, and I think that he is going to just try his hardest to get Nancy the Speaker of the House because she isn't as radical or as corrupt as some of the other members of the House. So I think that he would really need to get her as the Speaker of the House, just so he can try to push through with bipartisan legislation.
So one of the things that I see people kind of talking about a little bit is the fact that we had such a record number of what I call defections, but there are retirements in the House. And people were retiring left and right because they either didn't like the Trump agenda or they realized that the Trump agenda was much more conservative than they were and they wouldn't be able to run on it, or they just didn't want to be a part of the Trump phenomenon. They didn't want to serve in the House while President Trump was the leader of the party. And so they left. Do you think, even though we lost the House, it's a net benefit for us because we have a much more closely aligned group that's left behind after all of that?
I think that this is just going to show that advancing the Senate by 5 seats is historic, and this shows that the movement is stronger than ever. I think this is just going to advance us to get out in 2020 to regain the House. I think this is just going to give us more momentum to try to get out there and regain the House, and I'm glad that those people that weren't aligned with Trump decided to retire because, their constituents know that they're tough critics of Trump, and, this is Trump era. You either get on board or you're going to lose. We saw it yesterday,
So what do you have planned for the Federation of Young Republicans down in Florida? What are your plans going forward? Because I saw someone post the re-election campaign for 2020 begins now, which is kind of exhausting. I was thinking, can't we wait until after the holidays before we begin that? But technically it does actually begin now. What are you guys going to be working on?
We're going to be trying to rally up a lot of college students this year. On my campus, we've added 86 new members. We signed up 86 and recruited 86 new members. I noticed on my campus that they tried to get a lot of liberal-leaning college students to register to vote. They made our university a polling place. So I really just want to rally up the college kids and show that, the GOP is not the same as it used to be. It's Trump era, We want to rally young voters that the Republican Party is really missing. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to campaign for locally and statewide, and we're trying to get as many people as possible on board.
I'm really excited about the work that you guys are doing across the country with your chapters. And I think Florida is important for you guys to be seeding the ground for young people to let them know that it's okay to be a Republican if they believe in limited government and lower taxes and things like that, that it's not only okay, but that they have a place that they can call home and kind of be politically active while pursuing their studies and preparing for their foray into adulthood. And the work that you're doing is super important because a lot of college campuses are not friendly to Republican thought right now. Do you see any of that happening on your campus where people are kind of having their views suppressed?
I do, especially in the classroom. I am fortunate enough to not have. I have a lot of people that come up to me and say, I'm really proud of what you're doing throughout the community. I'm really glad that you are able to have your voice. I know people in my chapter that have been oppressed, that they got death threats for voicing their opinions, and, you know, teachers giving them bad grades because they wore a Trump hat. So it's definitely, there's definitely propaganda and bias on college campuses. And I'm so glad that we have a place that we can come all together and rally against, and, you know, we can all have discussions, and we have like-minded individuals that believe in the same things we do. And about the Senate, or about the midterm elections in Florida, I do want to, I am truly thrilled that Floridians did reject socialism. I want to congratulate Governor DeSantis and and Senator Rick Scott for running a truly grassroots campaign. And I just want to say that we will build on the prosperity and growth that makes Florida strong, and we will make Washington work for us.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And so I want to say thanks, Tabitha. Tabitha Bingham, Director of Communications for Florida's Federation of Young Republicans. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And you really did have a great night last night for the state of Florida. The rejection of Gillum's socialist politics was, I was literally biting my nails. In we were at a restaurant last night.
We were too.
Yeah,
down here.
It was just, because at one point the Democrats on the panel that I was sitting on during a downtime where we weren't filming, they erupted and they were like, Gillum's gonna win, and we've got Stacey Abrams. And I was sitting on the, because they had us divided off by parties, so I was sitting with the Republican women, and we all looked at each other, and I thought, not Florida, not my second home, because I come to Florida twice a year with my family to go to the beach. And I was like, how could this be? And then later, as the night progressed, they never corrected that statement. But I saw it up on I was like, wait, DeSantis is ahead. Wait, what do they mean? Rick Scott, Gillum's not winning. So I was literally like just trying to gallop and keep up. And I woke up this morning and I felt like, Florida dodged a bullet. I really did.
We did. We will not have socialism in the state of Florida, and hopefully we never will. I just hope that we can continue on being a prosperous and free state that we are. So I'm really thrilled that Florida, we won in 2016, and we're continued on, and we're still going to make Florida great. So I'm truly excited and optimistic.
Well, fantastic work. You guys probably deserve a little bit of time off, maybe some rest and relaxation this weekend before you get gunning for the next big contest. Tabitha Bingham, Director of Communications for Florida's Federation of Young Republicans, thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you so much.
All right, it's good to talk to you. I'm excited about the developments in Florida. I really thought to myself, how can Florida have changed that much, from people moving from California to Florida, people moving from New York to Florida? Could they really have moved there and changed the state that much, that quickly? And why would they be voting for socialist policies when they ran from them in New York? They ran from the policies in California that were driving up the cost of business, driving up their property taxes, driving up the cost of living. Why would they want to do the same thing in Florida? Florida has a really great economic outlook. And, you couple that with the tourism, it's actually a pretty diverse state. You look at it and you say, it's kind of the best of all of the worlds with the weather and everything. Of course, you got the tornado or the hurricanes, but, what are you going to do? So I was concerned. But good news is they chose, in my opinion, correctly. So right now I want to go to Kellyanne Conway's, the remainder of her comments from last segment that we were talking about. I just want to get those out of the way. And then talk a little bit more about the analysis here. I have some information for you on both sides of the abortion debate, calling last night a victory and what that looks like for us. And we'll just wrap that up during this segment as well. It's number 3.
Without the president's engagement on the ground, 53 rallies since he took office, 30 just in the last 2 months since Labor Day, an intensive 6-day swing leading up to Election Day, all the time being president at the same time, with historic gains. That last day alone, the 3 people he went and campaigned for, Mike DeWine for governor of Ohio, Mike Braun, senator now from Indiana, Josh Hawley in Missouri, huge pickups, particularly in those 2 Senate seats, those flipped from Democrat to Republican, on the strength of the president showing up to packed houses, historic rallies, and overflow crowds. There's just no substitute for his engagement.
And I know there were some races where they said, the president didn't help, but for the most part, his engagement on the ground for candidates was very beneficial. I know here in the state of Missouri, I'm telling you, they probably should have had the camera on the whole time, because they had a television on with no sound, so we could see the returns coming in. And we had some snafus with some of the machines here in Missouri. And so there were 3 precincts that were staying open late. So in other words, our polls in Missouri all close at 7. And these precincts were going to stay open until 9:30 so that people who didn't get a chance to vote could, because of the problem with the machines. Now, I'm a paper voter. I believe in voting on the paper. You color in your circles like the Scantrons of old, and that's what you do. But in these precincts, they had to stay open later, so that meant the returns couldn't come in. And the Secretary of State was keeping the results for the local races, so anything in the state only, he was keeping those back because he didn't want to have all the precincts reporting except those 3. Well, we were still getting reporting from the ground, actual real-time reporting on the race with Josh Hawley. And boy, was it something to watch, because there was a brief moment where Claire McCaskill and he were in a dead heat, but for the most part, he was ahead of her. And as the night continued, he just pulled further and further out. And I thought he would beat her by maybe 4 points. I thought it was sure it would be 4 points or more. He beat her by 10 points. That is a referendum if I've ever heard of one. And so I look forward to hearing more from him on that. When we get back, we'll take your calls, and we'll be speaking with Chad Groening of onenewsnow.com. It's 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Stay right there. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. A caravan of 3,000 migrants in Honduras plans to travel north to cross our southern border. This alarming development prompted President Donald Trump to threaten to deploy U.S. troops. Predictably, the New York Times has written a piece entitled, "What is the Caravan and Why Does Trump Care?" Because 3,000 people surging across our border is an invasion. Liberals often point to Deuteronomy 10:19, a Bible verse about being kind to foreigners. But the Bible differentiates between a sojourner, a legal immigrant, and a foreigner or an illegal immigrant. One has rights and privileges the lawbreaker does not have. Specifically, Romans 13:4 says, "For government is a minister to God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil." Let's be careful to interpret Scripture correctly, as God never sanctions lawbreaking. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Oh, what's that song we used to sing? Amazing Grace. It was one of them where we sang, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." You know, they took the word wretch out. Many people took the word wretch out. They said, because don't say that. That's offensive. But without Jesus, you are a wretch.
Don't miss Bishop E.W. Jackson and The Awakening. Weekday mornings at 9 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Chris Brooks.
We cannot underestimate the responsibility of evangelism. That is why shows like this, Equipped, which is committed to equipping you every day to live, share, and defend your faith, are extremely important, because anyone who does not confess Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior is outside of God's saving grace.
Equipped. Weekdays at noon Central on Urban Family Talk. Stacey Washington.
And so to this day, I don't eat green beans. If they bring me a plate of food at a restaurant and they've substituted green beans for some other vegetable because the other vegetable is out of season, I will make them bring me a saucer and remove the green beans from my plate and take them off of the table because I cannot abide green beans. And so Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have to sit down to the table and it's loaded up high with green beans, and they have to stay there until they've eaten them all. That's the table they set. They boiled the green beans, they picked them, they snapped them, they put them into the steamer, they've cooked them, they seasoned them with salt and pepper, and now they're on the table with a little side of butter, and that's all they're getting, and they're going to have to eat these until they win.
Stacy on the Right. Weekday afternoons at 2 Central on Urban Family Talk. You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
So I'm over here laughing a little bit because y'all know that these developments mean Rosenstein, because he's on his way out too. You know, so if you're sitting in the audience and you're thinking, what's going to happen? Well, Sessions has resigned at the suggestion of the president. We knew it was coming. No shock, no awe. We also know, come on now, work with me here. We know that Rosenstein is going to go as well. And that means he won't be overseeing the Mueller probe. And remember, he's one who is not as friendly towards the president, but he's had to learn. You're going to learn how to like your boss, because he's had to learn over these past few weeks. Remember when this whole 25th Amendment, and I'll record him, whether it was said in sarcasm or if he was serious, when that came out, the first thing Rod Rosenstein said, he was on the record as saying, I will resign provided the president does not publicly humiliate me with his comments. So he's very concerned about the president saying things about him and vilifying him in the way that the president has treated Jeff Sessions. And I've been, you know, it's not been my favorite thing with the president, his behavior towards Jeff Sessions. I think it could have been handled better. And it's definitely not something that I would like to see. Like if you're having trouble with an employee, whether it's government or anything else, publicly having the spat instead of dealing with it privately, it's just not, that's not my way. I don't think that's the way that's effective. But I'm also not the president. I haven't, I haven't a say in how that all goes on. But I think Jeff Sessions made the right decision in leaving, because the relationship between he and his boss had deteriorated to a point where he was no longer going to be able to discharge his duties. And I am someone who has written extensively about Jeff Sessions' work in increasing gun prosecutions. And so for people who are constantly whining about gun control, what we actually have is an extensive network of laws on the books that, when properly enforced, deter criminals from illegally obtaining firearms. But when we give people hand smacks and wrist smacks for straw purchasing guns for criminals, that encourages more of that behavior. And Jeff Sessions increased criminal prosecution of straw purchases and illegal possession of firearms by 33% in the first 12 months that he was the AG. Since then, the number has gone up from there. That is the kind of good work from the Department of Justice that we need to see more of as American taxpayers and individuals who want to see criminals prosecuted. So I think that Jeff Sessions deserves huge, it's applause and it's gratitude for his work in the Department of Justice in increasing gun prosecutions and for cracking down on sex trafficking and, pornography. He's been good. But his recusal from the oversight of the Mueller investigation without first discussing it with the president seems to have been a fatal error that he could not recover from. And that's why we're seeing him resign at this point. I sincerely hope to see someone that we like put in that position, someone that we can all agree is trustworthy and can duly discharge those duties for the remainder of the president's first term. We don't know. We don't know who to, I've seen some word on the street. I'm not going to even venture off into those kinds of speculations, but certainly we saw this coming. And so Rosenstein will be next. We'll see if this happens at the end of the week. What is today? Wednesday? It's hump day. I don't know what day it is. I was up so late last night with that election panel and then getting home, and I was like all hopped up on Mountain Dew, ready to scissor kick people in the back of the neck. And so I stayed up, and I was just like a kid who gets hopped up and can't go to bed. And when I finally went to sleep, the last thing I thought was, you're going to pay tomorrow. And I have been. I've been paying all day for the fact that I stayed up too late last night. You know, these aren't the wonder years for me anymore. I'm a mom with teenagers. I have to get my sleep. Somebody should have called me up or texted me and said, what do you think you're doing? Stop it. Get in your bed. But no. So everybody else at home was asleep, and I was still up, like checking returns and like, you know, it was literally like I was hopped up on Mountain Dew. I don't actually drink Mountain Dew. If you get that reference, if you know what movie I'm talking about when I say that, so you get a good laugh there. We are going to go now to Chad Groening, who is one of my favorites, and I have a lot of favorites over at the news division of American Family Radio, and Chad is one of them. He does fantastic reporting, and he's interviewed me a ton of times, but now I want to get his take on the election. Chad, thank you for joining today.
It is a great honor to be on Stacy on the Right. Yeah. I mean, talk about you're one of my favorite people too, you know.
Well,
I mean,
thank you. Appreciate it.
I always put you on the top of the list of interview possibilities, you know, and I'm always glad when you come on and talk to me, and when we get you on onenewsnow.com and American Family News.
Yeah, I love coming on because that's like so I've said this before when Fred Jackson came on during Share-a-thon that you guys go the extra mile to get the reporting, and you put the entire story there. So the stuff that's left off of the AP Newswire, you go get all of that and you put that in. And I really appreciate it because there's not a lot of sources you can go to get that kind of great news. And we have that as a part of what we do here at American Family Radio. That's like, it's huge. It's a really big deal. So Chad, what'd you think about last night? I know it was a mixed bag, but how do you see things going today?
Yeah, well, I was, as your previous guest was alluding to and what you were discussing, I think that part of the problem with the House was there were just too many people who retired. And as you mentioned, some of them probably were better off to be retired, but unfortunately the people who replaced them, the Republicans who replaced them, were not able to get the job done as far as getting elected and holding on to those seats. And the good thing is also the fact that this is an historical precedent, which has obviously been repeated, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been in the House. And certainly if you look at what the losses that Barack Obama had in his first midterm after becoming president, far, far worse as far as Republicans beating his party. So that's a good thing. And, of course, even better is the fact that the Republicans really, really did well in the Senate and for the most part in the other races, the governor's races, as you and your guests were talking about, the Florida that was huge, Stacey, huge. I mean, I was talking to people and it looked like, good grief, we were going to have this fine Congressman Ron DeSantis go down and lose to this socialist, crazy guy who wants to raise taxes on everybody and you know is being under investigation and then of course the other perhaps even better is the fact that Governor Rick Scott is now going to be Senator Rick Scott, and Senator Bill Nelson is going to go back home to Florida and retire. So that's a good thing, you know. So right. and you know you mentioned and you talk about Texas, huge, a victory there. Ohio, Mike DeWine winning. Missouri, of course. I used to live in Missouri also, Stacey, as you probably know.
Yeah.
And Josh Hawley beating Claire McCaskill. You know, Indiana, you know. Fortunately, Joe Donnelly wasn't able to use his third-party guy to help him steal that election. And in the Georgia governor's race, of course, that's still kind of, you know, being challenged. But those places, you know, and there were some disappointments, too. You know, the Kansas governor's race, you know, didn't go quite well for the Republican, Mr. Kobach. And Wisconsin, unfortunately, you know, Governor Walker, you know, that they've been going after him and going after him and going after him, Stacey, and they finally got him.
I hate it. I hate it so bad because if there's anybody who has held a governorship who has really been treated unfairly and still towed the line and really benefited the people of his state with no credit, no one to say thank you, it's Scott Walker. And he's really one of those quiet, reserved men who just does a good job and doesn't expect much back for it. And I feel like he's too good for the people of Wisconsin. Like, they're going to get what they deserve now. And they fought for it for I don't know how many years now, and now they're going to get the full recompense. You know how in the Bible where God, the Israelites would be begging for a king, and he's like, okay, if you insist, and then they'd have a king would just rule over them and it'd be horrible. I think that's what's about to happen to them. They're going to get it, and they kind of deserve it because they have someone good and they just threw him away.
Yeah, well, it is, of course, it's kind of really, I guess, hard to believe that in light of all the things that Mr. Trump has done, with the economy, with national defense, he's got, Iran on the run, he's, the dealing with North Korea, and yet so many people decided they wanted to go the other direction, particularly in the House, and it just, it just boggles the mind. But you got to remember that a lot of the people in this country don't have the same worldview that you and I have, Stacey, and that's the problem.
No, and it's when you say worldview, really that's the period at the end of the sentence. You're either you have a biblical worldview or you don't, and if you don't have one, you have a susceptibility to receiving lies, and it goes straight in. It's like, when you take a sponge and it's dry and it's as hard as a rock and you drop it into some liquid and it just sucks all the liquid up. That's the same impact when people don't have a biblical worldview and they're not reading the scripture so that they can become wise. You literally have a brain that's like a hard sponge, and when lies get poured into it, you just soak them right up. You receive them without any pushback. And then once you've received them, you become immune to the truth. It bounces off you like something that's been sprayed with that, what's that stuff, that tire wet that you spray on a tire, and then after that, anything wet that touches it, it just beads right off. It's like that. Your brain's like that. It can't receive the truth. It just can't go in. And I'm saying this because I keep talking to Democrats, Chad, and if they say something like, anything, and if I say, oh, well, the government reports that, so many of those people have done X. Well, I don't believe the government statistics. And then the next minute they'll say, well, only the government can decide who deserves a gun. And you're like, wait, but you just said you don't believe the government. But now you say that, well, the government should believe, the government decides who gets a gun. But you also believe that the government practices police brutality through law enforcement. How can you believe all three of those things at the same time? And they're like, well, you're just a token. Then they start insulting you. So this is a real thing that is going on in this country. The misinformation, it's being poured down people's throats. They're receiving it because they can't see the truth. They can't hear it because they refuse to have a biblical worldview. What do you think is going to happen as we get further and further into this? I feel, obviously I trust God. I don't feel fear in a way that I'm terrified, but I feel a sense of foreboding that the more of our children we leave in public school and the more of these people are brought up this way, that they will be completely unable to learn new things that are true because they're brainwashed.
Yeah. And of course, we all know that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And we know that, the end times prophecy tells us that. And, I'm very much concerned about that as well. And I am encouraged that that there seems to be, though, a lot more people who are getting it. And as you probably told your audience, look at the black population and how much better off the black population is. And some of them are getting it, and some of these others. And it isn't just a monolithic, I believe this, I'm supposed to hate Republicans, and I'm supposed to always love Democrats, and Democrats are always right. And I think that, and it's not just among the black population, but I think it's just, it makes common sense and everything. But at the same time, we do know that unfortunately we're going to be stuck with the Chucky Schumers and with Nancy Pelosi's and their kind of really until the Lord takes us home, and that's what we're going to have to deal with.
Well, that's kind of a depressing thought. But God, so we know that even in times of the lean times, that God is in control, and we can still experience joy and receive the blessings that He has for us, even in those lean times, and even in times where politically it's a little on the hopeless side. I do have just a sense that when I was listening to the president speak earlier today about his prospects with Nancy Pelosi, that he has a strategy for dealing with her and for dealing with a divided government. And I kind of feel like when I heard him in Columbia, when he was speaking, it's like he knew the House was gone, but he was very, very confident that he could do good things in the Senate. And so if that's true, then clearly he's got a lot going for him. And did you hear him, Chad, today when the reporter asked, what does God have to do with your life or something like that? And he said, God has very much to do with my life. He's a huge part of my life, and also of Vice President Pence. I thought that was pretty stunning.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you got to remember, too, that, if our president blesses is he? First of all, he's a blessing to Israel. We know that, and I was kind of wondering if that might come into play with some kind of intervention with these elections. It didn't quite come into play, but yeah, he is really. A lot of people say this, Stacey, and I think I agree that I think God picked Donald Trump to be the president of the United States at this particular time, and I'm just basing it. It's just my opinion, just like it is other people's opinion. But we needed somebody who it's just like today taking on Jim Acosta. I don't know if you saw that. Or not.
I saw it. I
mean, this guy, President Trump, he basically took Jim Acosta to the woodshed. He became control. He would not let Jim Acosta and some of his fellow liberal left-wing journalists get away with doing that. And he kept control. And a lot of people saying, well, he's being mean. He's being mean. Well, you know what?
That was kind of awesome.
We need people like Donald Trump. And hopefully there will be more people, more leaders emerging who are like Donald Trump.
I agree. Chad, great way to wrap up the program. Thank you for the election analysis and for joining us on short notice.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, we'll talk again soon. You enjoy your afternoon, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey.
All right. That's the show. I'm overtired, but still feeling hopped up. Like, what's going on? So it's irrelevant because the show's over. God bless you from the heartland. Enjoy your evening, and I'll be back with you tomorrow, Lord willing. Have a great night.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk is that